So after INSEAD, coming to Indian Express
Yes.
and Hindustan Times,
Mhm.
I think both of these, I would say, more traditional,
Yes.
family-backed, promoter-led companies.
Yes.
So how is your, from doing case studies in INSEAD to coming to a promoter-led setup?
True.
Also, can be press is always be tricky, right? How do you
True.
balance business versus ethics versus information?
True.
So how was your experience
Transitioning.
transitioning, and also how did you look at the leadership in this setup? Because the corporate setup is very, very different. While press is, I think you still have to balance between the profit and responsibility, right?
Yeah. The transition was pretty significant, I would say. The transformation from Mohit at Deloitte and INSEAD and to Indian Express and Hindustan Times. If it was not my own decision that I want to do this, I think I might have quit much sooner. And I wanted to prove that, okay, my decision was right. Correct. Because it is my decision. That's why I kind of kept on for a longer time. Having said that, many times the organization is basically your reporting manager. Yeah. And I was fortunate to report to the people in both Indian Express and Hindustan Times, where there was a lot of trust between my manager and what I was trying to achieve. And because of that trust, I got freedom to try things, to execute things, because they knew that I'm trying very hard to achieve and to move forward. Correct. They can see through this. It's and I was in the digital space, so fortunately, I did not have a lot of old mindset or thought processes. Typical press culture. I have more modern, outward-looking reporting manager, so I was fortunate at that. But the philosophy that any difficulty that I'm facing, correct, be it people, organizational, or technical, it relates to. I might not have this articulation at that time, correct, but it is important that the awareness, the difficulty is because of a weak muscle. Now the question comes is, do you want to develop that muscle? For example, if I am having a challenge with the internal politics of an organization, one is I can blame the culture of the organization and quit. Second is I can say that, okay, I am having difficulty because I'm not able to play this game. I am hassled, I'm disturbed by this game because I have a weak muscle of how to manage it and it is shaking me internally. Yeah. This next level comes, do I want to develop this muscle or not? Which is, in future, will I need this muscle or not? If I'm building myself in a professional corporate world career. Correct. If the answer is yes, that you will need this muscle, then it becomes easier for us to sustain, to stay there in that difficult situation. And rather than taking it as a transaction between two teams or another person who's playing games or somebody else, it becomes self muscle development or capability development or skill building exercise. Correct. So every time you go back after losing that battle with another team or another person, then you don't blame that person. You figure out that, okay, I did not know how to maneuver this situation, and the same thing will repeat in some other form in the future. So I have to find a way to figure this out, and this is a gym for me to practice that. Yeah. So this kind of helps you in making more comfortable in those situations as you are struggling and becoming more comfortable. So I keep telling to my junior or team members also that don't quit when things are difficult. Just be aware the level of why it is difficult, and will you be finding similar difficulties in other places, be it technical or people or anything else, and figure out how to resolve that difficulty. In some other words, I say this, a very important skill to have is conflict resolution. If you are avoiding conflicts because you are not good at conflict resolution, it's going to be very damaging for both personal and professional career. Yeah. So label it as something, okay, I need to develop this skill. And then every day see yourself that every situation is helping you develop that skill. Are you able to do it or not? And there are once you figure it out, there are enough information out there in terms of books, in terms of courses, in terms of mentors.
Correct.
But what is very important to always keep telling yourself is that whatever you're experiencing, you are not the first person. Thousands and thousands of people have experienced and got over this and resolved it. You are not able to figure it out. Figure it out. Yeah. And that's, I think, a seed for entrepreneurship is figuring things out. If you're not good at that, building a company and starting a company will always be very challenging.
Problem solving.
Problem solving, figuring things out. Yeah. So it is not always customer and product problem. Yeah. Figuring things out is applicable as a general skill, general nature of a person.
Yeah. True. And so obviously it was a different experience, right? And after that you noticed a gap, right? So tell us about that. How did you figure out? First is, okay, because you were coming from a family background, went to IIT, went to a good school, were in a stable kind of a job.
Yes.
Why entrepreneurship first, right? So that's the question I would like to ask.
Yeah. And I again reflected on this. Why am I doing this? Yeah. I think again, looking back to the seeds, maybe that 9/11 seeded that thought is that I'm gonna die one day. It's all just a phase in time. Yeah. And don't make it a very big thing out of it. So if you want to go back and you want to start something, there are many risks associated. You might fail. Having seen such big accident or incident in front of you, what worse can happen? In that sense, if I take a risk of quitting my job in the US and spending all the money in my MBA, and go back, and my starting salary was 48,000 rupees a month. That's before taxes. Yeah, that will be foolish. Right? Wow, who does that in the sane mind, right? But having seen certain things, you feel that it's okay. Much worse can happen.
Correct.
Right. So I'll go this journey. Yeah, and we'll see what comes along. So that the kind of maybe gave the courage to start it, because when I came back to India, a lot of people who respected me for getting into IIT, in my own close relatives and friends, very close friends, they kind of started like joking around you that, oh, he could not survive there. He got into IIT by fluke. Yeah, and then the reality is now out. So there were many such comments started coming in from the close friends that you never expect. You always thought that people understand you. Yeah,
correct.
Yeah, so in a way it became a kind of a motivation to that. No, I have to prove it that I can do it. What I'm trying to achieve. These are kind of some internal seeds or engines or drivers. They start society unintentionally started kind of putting in. So the journey, the point was, in a corporate, I'm not able to see the impact of my work. It is not something which I can see, this is what I did, and it resulted in something, because many of time the work is not kind of, it was just getting consumed internally.
Correct.
It was getting lost in some meetings and discussions. Yeah. So that was the kind of a starting point. The courage came from that 9/11 incident, or having the success of getting into IIT because I wanted to, and I could control my mind and body to a certain level, that my body will get up at the time I will tell it to get up. It will work for as many hours as I want it to work. So having achieved certain level of control over body and mind, I would assume so, that gave the confidence that once I do it, once I start, I will be able to figure it out. So there were many small things which I might not have said in the right sequence, but but these are kind of a few things: getting early success, and from within IT also getting a job which was one of the most sought after job in getting $1 salaries in US placements.
Yes.
Yeah. So I did few things right, getting that job. So all these things kind of gave enough confidence that once I decide to do a company, I should be able to do it.
Correct. Because I think at that point, after .com bubble, this probably will be the second generation of entrepreneurs, because the first wave of entrepreneurship in India was around 2005-06, when we saw some kind of funding coming to venture.
Yes.
And the earliest ones, right?
Yes.
and then again around 2008-9, you saw more companies, right? Which are, some of them are now going to the IPO, right? Which have become unicorns. So founders, I don't think, had a lot of social capital at that time.
Yes.
So that's the reason probably people around you were wondering, why is he starting up and not going back to US or Europe?
Yes.
And India was also, I think, this phase I remember from 2008 to 2013-14 or whatever. This was very shaky phase of Indian economy, right? Even though we were not impacted by the global financial crisis, but it was not the best of time for Indian economy.
Exactly.
Right? I remember the Taj attack in Mumbai, right? I was in US at that time, and as the national mood was also very gloomy and not very, there was no sort of that animal spirits of the economy were not visible, right?
True.
And even though we were not affected by global financial crisis, so I was a little surprised, why didn't we pick it up? Interest rates were low, all the fundamentals were probably same people, same system, right? So there was also probably not, I didn't see a lot of people starting up at that time. Right? So you started your journey,
yes,
right? Yes. And tell us about the process of identifying where are you going to build.
Yeah.
Because you were coming from a technology background.
Yeah.
You had idea about, obviously, INSEAD gave you some tools, etc., to think about business problems. And how did you go about, okay, this is the exact area I'm going to focus
on? One of the key insights from INSEAD was to not start a business based on an idea. It's always dime a dozen. There is something more that you need to know before you start a venture. And when I was here with Indian Express and Hindustan Times, I was actually also, some of my close friends became investors. So I was also seeing the way many companies were getting started based on ideas.
Correct.
And they were getting some venture capital at that same time. And many times the idea was a kind of a copy-paste of what worked in the US. This model has worked in that economy, therefore it will work here. So let's start something. Somehow intuitively, I did not feel comfortable with that approach, because what was missing was context. Each market has their own context. Yeah. And that's the reason many of those startups at that time, which started only very few, got the tailwind, and then they achieved the kind of a success that we are seeing it now. But a lot of the companies were not able to see through it.
Correct.
Yeah, I started something. Whenever I did that, the approach was more traditional in terms of who's the customer. Do you understand the customer deeply? Yeah, and what are you providing, what are you solving, and what value are you adding?
Correct.
When I tried to do that in a B2C market, B2C space, I was not able to develop that confidence that this is what will work. For me, when in maybe not a typical startup founder, but for me, I was not doing it, let's try it out. So I planned things very, very, very thoroughly. And when I was doing that, a lot of the ideas that I started with, when I went deeper into doing deep dive into those ideas, that why nobody has done that so far, I found out the reasons. And then I realized that what I bring to the table, I will not be able to solve those reasons. There were several areas where I was kind of thinking that, okay, why not this, why not that? Yeah. And then I realized that the more traditional way of the way I was approaching was not in B2C, it was more in B2B, where you have a few set of customers, big enough that when you provide them services, you know what problem are you solving for them. Big enough that they will give you revenues for you to start a company and make it profitable. You do it in a certain way. And in this journey of before I started Quantify, where I realized that the investor capital, our external capital, comes at a cost. And are you willing to pay that cost? And for me, as I said earlier, your team and their families is a very important part of how I measure my success. If I have to compromise on that,
correct,
yeah, I will not be proud of the work that I'm doing. and may not enjoy the journey. And then it will be something that I want to get rid of, which people call exit. Right? They will do it 4 or 5 years maximum and they exit. I'm doing it 15, 16 years and I'm on it right now with full thing. So there was again a lot of reading, journaling, self-reflection, meditation. Those clarities, they start coming slowly and slowly.
Correct.
Right. So the idea that we found was there is a market for information, that buy information.